Hello, and welcome to Thursday Night Live. So on November 10th of this year, Robert F. Kennedy removed the black box warning off of hormonal therapy, primarily hormone replacement therapy for women, which is traditionally or had been traditionally prescribed for women who were in perimenopause and moving into menopause, as well as menopausal women. And when he did that, it created quite this backlash of commentary on things like Twitter and on YouTube. And I wanted to kind of talk about the science, especially if you're a woman and you're listening to this show and are considering going on hormone replacement therapy, and the pros and cons and the guidelines to have it be safe and effective for you. So women take hormone replacement therapy, or in the past have taken hormone replacement therapy because, all right, I got the glasses thing going on today, because it helps eliminate hot flashes, which is huge in, all right, I didn't really have hot flashes, but for a lot of women, hot flashes are big. Night sweats, it improves sleeping, it improves mood, they can improve energy and the overall quality of life of someone going through that change. But even after that, there's a benefit. It helps with bone health and prevents injury like bone loss. So, you don't break a hip, that kind of thing, as you get further on and later on into life. But they also found that it provides cardiovascular protection. It helps reduce type 2 diabetes, colorectal cancer by 20 to 30%. And so there are a lot of benefits for women to use this product, even though it's a pharmaceutical, later on in life. And so the question came up, and the fury came up, because one of the things that has been tied to hormone replacement therapy is the risk of getting breast cancer. And that's really the piece that I want to focus in on today, because when they apply a black box warning, it's kind of like the warning that they put on cigarette packs that say, using this product can cause cancer. And so a black box warning is a very similar warning that's not just on the paper, but it is graphically displayed everywhere so that you know the risk of the product. And so where the controversy came from was, what were his motives? Was he doing this as a positive step for women? Or was he being a sellout and minimizing the risk to increase pharmaceutical sales? And that really was the question I went into this research with. And so I'm going to present to you, what I found. And so before you make judgment, take a look at the science and decide for yourself. And again, especially if you are a woman in that period of your life. So here's the true risk profile. Fear about hormone replacement therapy, female hormone replacement therapy, which is providing the body with estrogen and progesterone, which are reproductive hormones, came from two major studies that found that hormone replacement therapy, HRT, was linked to an increased risk of breast cancer. And so when they started the study, after 5 years, they noticed this increased risk, stopped the study, and then put out this black box warning. And by that time, there were millions of women that were looking for relief. And at its height, there were 15 million women taking hormone replacement therapy. But after that black box warning came out, the numbers dwindled down to next to nothing. And so here were the studies. One of them was the Women's Health Initiative, and it was the largest randomized drug-controlled study. And it was launched in 1993, and it involved thousands of postmenopausal women. And so in that study, there were two prongs of it. One was estrogen plus progesterone, which had 16,000 plus women in it. And so in that study, you had to still have your uterus, so you couldn't have had a hysterectomy as part of that study. And one of the things that they found out was that that taking that regimen significantly increased the risk of invasive breast cancer by 24%. Translating to approximately 9 additional cases per 1,000 for women. And so I did the numbers, and I have to just read this because I'm not a statistician. Okay, so in context, approximately 48,000 women, so this was a very interesting number, about 48,000 women out of a 15 million sample size population would be expected to develop breast cancer naturally over the course of a year. 48,000 women get breast cancer each year, whether they use hormone replacement therapy or not. Okay, but applying the risk rate of the hormone replacement therapy, it would be an additional 13,500 cases would be added to that. So it would take it to like 50-something thousand cases of breast cancer. So what I thought was fascinating was that 8,000 women per year get breast cancer, whether they're doing hormone replacement therapy or not. So that was interesting. But they also did the same, as part of the same group, they had women that so the first one, they were doing estrogen and progesterone, and it was a synthetic form of progesterone that they were giving the women because that's what they did back in the day. Then they did another part of it, the estrogen only group. And the women that got the estrogen only were women that had hysterectomies and no longer had a uterus. And what they found was that they got a totally different set of numbers, and they showed a significant reduction, a 23% reduction in getting breast cancer, which is kind of counterintuitive right there. And so one of the reasons why progesterone is added to women that still have their uterus is that if you have unopposed estrogen in your body, it can accelerate and promote the growth of endometriosis or endometrium cancers. And so if you don't have a uterus, you can't have those things. And so there wasn't that piece of risk tied to it. So that was pretty interesting. Okay. But then there was another it wasn't a study, it was a controlled observation that they did. And this was the Nurses' Health Study, where they followed 121,700 female nurses for decades. And they confirmed, this observational study confirmed the current use of estrogen plus a synthetic progesterone therapy, and with the rising risk of invasive breast cancer. And then there was another observational study done, the Million Women Study, and this was out of the UK, where over 1 million women were followed, and they also identified the increased risk of breast cancer, confirming the association of the estrogen and the synthetic progesterone hormone. And so these studies, although observational and subject to potential bias, have been remarkably stable and consistent with the randomized Women's Health Initiative study. Together, they established that synthetic progestins are the primary driver of breast cancer risk increase in combined hormone therapy. And so it's not the estrogen, it's the progesterone. However, one of the things that many people don't talk to you about, and if you've gone to your doctor and talked to them about hormone therapy, they are just going to throw that synthetic, generic, progesterone at you. But the reality is, it really depends on what kind of progesterone you're taking, because it's not the progesterone that raises the risk, it's the type that's used. And where the risk comes in is if you're using that older synthetic form. And so for instance, and I have to try to pronounce this, Medroxyprogesterone Acetate, which is what was used in that Women's Health Initiative study, and then Progesterone Acetate was used in the UK study, which even had a higher risk than the one in the Women's Health Initiative study. But what they found was the underlying mechanism is clear. These synthetic molecules are designed for greater potency and oral bioavailability, but they interact differently with breast tissue receptors than natural progesterone, potentially stimulating malignant cell growth and driving the increased cancer statistics. Blech. Too many big words. Anyway, but what they also found is if you used micronized progesterone, which is what they would use in like bioidentical hormones or natural progesterones, which is available by prescription. I'm going to say that again. It is available by prescription, and you have to ask for it very specifically because they just want to give you that synthetic stuff. Anyway, what they found is that it imposed little to no additional risk. What the number was 0.95, so less than a 1% increased risk versus 23% risk. And so this risk profile is dramatically lower than using this synthetic hormone. And again, if that many women are getting breast cancer without using hormone therapy, and you are getting a better quality of life by using the hormone therapy, is that 1% going to change anything really? But there are a couple of little caveats that they also found. Okay, so there's using the natural progesterone, the micronized progesterone, that's one piece. But they also found that women needed to get on hormone therapy within the first, the first 10 years of menopause. And so they recommended that if you're like going to menopause in your late 50s, early 60s, that you go on it right away. Because one of the things that they discovered in that Women's Health Initiative test was that many of the women started the hormone replacement therapy were already older and had already been in menopause for a significant period of time. And they were also the women that were more affected by breast cancer. And so they have found that getting in on it and replacing earlier tends to work better. Okay, so I already talked about the risk. And so, I talked about the cost. And so if you get the synthetic progesterone, usually it's considered a generic. Most insurances, you don't pay anything. You pay the $4, whatever that nominal amount is, because it's a generic. If you get the micronized, it definitely is a bit more expensive. You can pay anywhere from $10 to $50 a month. But if that's something you want to do, if your risk benefit analysis says to you, I want to do hormone replacement therapy, I think that it's worth it. I mean, insurance does cover it. You definitely don't get it for free. But it will cover the bulk of the cost. And I think $10 a month or whatever is not that bad. They talk about, when I was doing the research, they were talking about, marketing challenges and distribution challenges, which I don't know how current that is, but then there's also the mindset, doctors aren't going to sit there and recommend to you or prescribe to you the micronized. You have to bring that to their attention and tell them that is what you want. You do not want the synthetic kind because you heard it from Dr. Rita, and she said, don't take the synthetic kind. So, but again, addressing hormonal issues and, that life change that women go through, it is a challenging time. And I think having the information that you need in order to make a good decision one way or the other, whether doing hormone replacement therapy is good for you, I just want to give you the tools and information for you to move forward. And then just coming full circle, this was something that I found very interesting, is that, the black box warning was taken off of hormone replacement therapy. However, the black box label was also taken off of, okay, so there are some people that contend that, based on statistics and of other prescription medications, the risk is a lot lower than getting a jab or something like that, of having some kind of an adverse event, which I don't really agree with that logic in particular. What I thought was interesting was that the black box label was also taken off of the synthetic form. And I didn't like that. And so, is it a money thing? Is it making it so that the pharmaceutical companies can get in another area? I mean, because hormone replacement therapy used to be a big money item, and it dropped once they came out with these risks of breast cancer, and they make you sign your life away in order to get it. But they also, in the same breath, didn't talk about this natural form of progesterone that you could take that you don't get the same risk benefit. And I would have been happier personally if he left the black box label on the synthetic, but took it off of the natural, but that's not what happened. And I don't really understand that. So women, if you're listening to this and you're going through that change, or you're within a few years of having gone into menopause, it's not too late. Just ask them for estrogen and this micronized progesterone, and you should be good to go, and you'll have good bones, and you won't have hot flashes, and it'll be good. Okay. So that's my thing for today. Guys, I know that you're there, and I hope I didn't bore the heck out of you, but if you have a wife or a girlfriend that's in that period of their life, this might be a topic that you might want to share with her as well. You just never know. Anyway, so this show is brought to you by soulhealer.com. If you have questions about doing hormone replacement therapy or any other health issue that might be going on with you, drop me a line, go to my website, send me an email, and we can set up a time for a private consultation. And you might have thought about becoming a medical intuitive counselor, or certified energy medicine practitioner, and you can do so from the comfort of your own home by signing up for my medical intuition energy medicine training program, which you can find at appliedenergeticsinstitute.com. That's appliedenergeticsinstitute.com. And if you want, you can download my free 50-page guide from the webpage, and it will get you started on your journey to opening yourself up to your intuition. Okay. And for anybody listening to this show in a recorded format, and you want to join the fun and festivities on Thursday night, the best place to go is my YouTube channel. That's Just Energy Radio on YouTube. Click on the live link and join the fun. And I hope to see you, I would say next week, but next week is Thanksgiving, so no show next week, but I will see you in 2 weeks. That's justenergyradio.com. And before I start saying hi to everybody, please do check out my social media. Go to my YouTube channel and subscribe. Go to my Substack. I'm posting a lot on Substacks. Subscribe there. Twitter, Rumble, any of my social media. I would really appreciate the thumbs up that you might have for me and my work. Where am I? I disappeared. There I am. Okay. So let's go over to the chat area and say hi. I know people were here really early, and we're